As we welcome Dr. Mindy Pelz.
Good morning, Dr. Mindy.
Good morning. Thank you for that intro. That was amazing.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thanks for the book.
Oh, thank you.
I learned so much reading the book. It's all in there. What I'm going to do now, what I've done is compose our conversation. By the way, go anywhere you like with it.
Yeah,
Feel free.
you.
If I ask the wrong question, just give me the right answer. But I've composed the interview to try and get people to go towards the book, because we don't have as long as the podcast have and things like that. So I'm going to go headlines-wise most of the time, if that's all right with you.
It's great.
Okay, so first of all, why are we designed to fast?
Oh, it's such a good question. So in the book, I talk about the thrifty gene hypothesis, which is if we had got to go all the way back to the hunter-gatherer days, and we have to look at the fact that we didn't have grocery stores, we didn't have pantries, we didn't have DoorDash, we didn't have access to all those foods. So we were actually genetically designed to thrive in a fasted state so we could go find food. But now you fast forward to today, and we're doing the complete opposite. And there's some theory, this is the thrifty gene theory, that we're actually going against our genetics now by eating all day long.
Yeah, and Hippocrates said, didn't he, let food be thy medicine. But he was the father of modern medicine. What we need is the mother of modern medicine, because, yeah, let food be thy medicine to a point, but sometimes not at all. And so what happens when we don't eat for longer periods generally, and then we'll get into the specific time zones?
Yeah, okay, great. So the best way to look at this, we call it metabolic switching. So as your blood sugar goes down, your brilliant body, what it does is it decides, hey, I have another fuel source. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to this other fuel source. A little bit like a hybrid car. Like all of a sudden it switches over and it starts to burn fat and make another product called a ketone. That ketone goes up into the brain, supercharges the brain, turns off hunger. And so you're over here feeling good, and your body's healing, and it's doing that by making a fuel from burning your fat.
And we have loads of fat reserves, don't we?
We do.
We can go for many weeks, is it, I think?
Yeah. Without food, you can actually go for months.
All right, because Phil Maffetone, who's a running guru, he talks about Zone 2 training, which is, it's sort of cut from the same cloth, Zone 2 training, because if you stay anaerobic, then you will exist on your fat sources, and you can run and you can run and you can run, and that's why as you get older, the further you run, the easier you find it. It's the same kind of thing, isn't it?
Well, okay, so this is what thank you for saying this, because this is what I love about fasting. I do not know another diet on the planet that gets easier the longer you do it.
Yeah.
That's why so many people are getting such great results. Yeah. So, and to your point, what I've been trying to do is really rebrand fat. Because when you look at what our brilliant bodies have done is when there is excess glucose, toxins, hormones, to save your life, instead of putting it around your heart and lungs, instead of putting it around your liver and all the other organs, it actually puts it around your belly, your booty. For women, it can go into our chest. It puts it around your face, all of these extra places. We go and look in the mirror and we start villainizing it and criticizing ourselves. But your body actually did the right thing at the right time. So when you go into a fasted state, what happens is all of a sudden the body goes, I think I stored some things a few years ago. Let me go burn that.
Yeah.
And it goes into this healing state. And it's really, truly a miracle.
Yeah, no, this other intelligence that we have, that we take for granted and therefore don't give any credit to on a daily basis, is it's super intelligence, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
And it's all there.
Yeah, we have really lost the belief in our own bodies. And a big reason why I wrote this for women is because women are suffering the most. And we turn on ourselves. We think bad thoughts. We think we're undisciplined. We can't stick to calorie counting. We can't stick to the latest diet. But we've lost track that we have this own inner guidance system that can do it for us if we just move out of the way and let it take over. And that's really what fasting does. One
of the reasons men should read this book, Fast Like a Girl, is because it will make you, as a bloke, thank your lucky stars that you wake up every morning and you are not challenged by most of the things that are in this book. But you have to know what they are to realise you're not challenged about them. And it's a squash and a squeeze, and life is a whole lot. I woke up this morning thinking, I can't complain about anything today. I have no excuses.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for honouring that.
No, gosh, you're welcome. How could I not, having read the book? And so let's get on to the different periods of fasting now, the different fasting windows. So I'm a regular 18-6 person, and we'll get onto that in a moment too, if you don't mind. So let's see what happens when you don't eat for 16 hours, for example. Give us the headlines for that.
Yeah, so when you haven't eaten for 16 hours, your body is moving from its sugar burner metabolism to its fat burner metabolism.
When does that happen within that period?
It's a great question. So about 8 hours after your last meal, your blood sugar is down enough that the body's like, okay, I'm going to switch over into this other fuel source.
Right, which is what we want.
Yeah. It takes about 4 hours to switch over. So we typically say intermittent fasting starts at 12 hours.
Got it.
So, and just for people who are going to try this, I really want to point out that those 4 hours, they can be a little challenging for people who've never done this. But because your body knows how to do it, with time it gets easier. And in the book, I mention a whole bunch of ways to make it easier to get to that 12 hours.
Brilliant.
So, but once you're at 12 hours, now the body's burning fat, making a ketone. And the longer you stay in that, to your question, at 16 hours, you see growth hormone go up. Growth hormone is the precursor to all hormones.
Every time you do it.
Every time you do it.
You have to build up. So it's not in 6 months' time or 12 months' time.
No.
It's today.
Yeah. And growth hormone is the hormone you stop getting after 30, which is why you age. So it also is what helps you burn fat.
It's anti-aging.
It's anti-aging. Right? I mean, it's crazy when you think about people
and you don't need PayPal to get it.
You don't need PayPal. You don't need to buy any fancy supplement or do anything. All you've got to do is train your body to go 12 hours and it makes its own growth hormone.
And it's so much easier than it may sound to some people. So I'm 18-6, so I eat between midday and 6 p.m. every day.
Yeah.
On the show, I'm fine now all the time because I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
It helps to have a job like mine that you wake up and as long as you get here in the right frame of mind, you're busy doing other stuff, so you don't even sort of consider hunger anyhow.
Right.
Now, I have, on the way to work, I have an oat milk cappuccino. And then when I get here, I have an oat milk cappuccino. But they're the only two things I consume other than water in my window of 18 hours. Does that ruin my role? Is it?
Yeah, that's the most common fasting question. I'm glad we got it out here in the beginning. No, I love it. So coffee typically does not pull you out of fasted
even
state.
With oat milk in it?
So the milk is where it gets a little tricky.
Right.
And this gets really complicated, but let me keep it simple. If it raises your blood sugar, then it pulled you out.
Yeah.
So oat milk may do that. So I'm just with love sharing.
No, I get it, and I thank you for that. And so, if it does pull me out, how much does it pull me out before I can get back into it again?
Yeah, so I usually say look for, and these are unfortunately American numbers, look for 10 points increase in your blood sugar.
How long a time period could that be?
Yeah, it within an hour of eating the oat milk.
Right.
But if I was to give you any fasting advice, it would be to skip the go black.
Yeah. Okay. And it's funny because I don't crave the idea of a black coffee, but I do crave the idea of the coffee that I have on the way to work and the one when I get here. And I think that may be because it has sugar in it. Because even you just saying that, I can almost taste the fact that that's the answer.
So the sugar will switch you back for sure.
It will, 100%. Yeah. All right. So we know what happens between 15 to 16 hours. Right. What happens at 17 hours?
Yeah. So 17 is where the magic really kicks in. And it's a process called autophagy. And autophagy is where your intelligent cells realize there's no nutrients, there's no blood sugar coming in. And so they start to clean up their act. So they do things like if there are any cellular parts, like the mitochondria that are sluggish or anything within the cell that's not working, they start to repair it. They also look around if there's bacteria or viruses in there, they'll destroy them. If the cell is going to be an aging cell or a cancer cell, it will do something called apoptosis, where it'll kill that cell and get it out of your body. So 17 hours is like your cleanup, your cellular cleanup. Because think about it, the body has to become stronger.
Yep.
It has to go find food. It doesn't become weaker.
Okay, and what's the next useful check-in point?
So 24 hours is another really excellent one. What the research shows is your whole microbiome in your gut resets itself.
So the longer you can go, the better it gets.
That's right.
All right.
Yes.
And people are worried about getting hungry. I can tell you every single day, after a certain point, you just don't get hungry. So when I get home now after the show, I get home between 12 and 1, midday and 1 p.m. this afternoon. I won't be like running into the house, eating everything in sight. I walk into the house and sometimes I think, you know what? Because you're just not hungry anymore.
Yep. But the point I really want to make to people is that I want to come back to this, it gets easier. So every time you do it, just hang in there. If you've tried it and you're like, it wasn't that easy for me, I promise you, the more you do it, the easier it'll get.
It's like fitness and it's like the microbiome. So, when you get fit, you get to a point where you don't dread going to the gym, you dread not going to the gym.
That's right.
And you can definitely get to that point. I used to have to make myself go for a run 10 years ago. Now I can't stand it if I don't go. I can't wait to go for a run.
That's right.
The microbiome, if you feed the microbiome the right stuff, it then craves things that are good for you. You can crave healthy food. It's incredible. If you've been there already, it's like grandma teaching grandma to suck eggs. If you haven't been there before, this world is out there waiting for you. You can get to a point very quickly, much quicker than you possibly think, or you might want to think. You can get there so quickly, and you can start to crave a better life from a consumption point of view, from a consumer point of view, physical consumer point of view. Right, 36 hours.
So 36 hours is one of my favorite, and it was a study that I found that showed after 36 hours, your body actually goes and finds the fat around your belly. So how many people want to lose belly fat?
It's so hard.
Yeah.
We think.
Right. But if you train yourself and we're not talking every day, we're talking like once a month, maybe once a year, once a quarter that you might go into that longer fast, but you do it to unstick weight because it forces the body to go burn the fat around the belly. And that's what we've just seen over and over again.
And that's one of the really incredible things.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Okay, this is 36 hours. It's not 36 weeks. It's not 36 nonsense deliveries to the door of something from somebody that's trying to make loads of money out of you. None of that stuff. It's 36 hours in your own life choosing to fast 48 hours.
So 48 hours, the research shows that our whole dopamine system reboots. So think about this for a moment. When I found that research, my thought was, why would the body do that? Well, you have to have motivation now. You're 48 hours in without food. You better have dopamine be at its prime so you can go find food.
Yes.
But what are we doing in this world? We're just dopamine saturated. Things aren't bringing us happiness anymore. People who are overeat, there's a lot of studies around how their dopamine system doesn't work the same way. So we just found 48 hours, you put somebody into that fast, and all of a sudden it reboots that whole system, and the little things in life bring you joy again.
So if you're in the wrong sort of mindset to do with food and you're overeating, looking for dopamine can be like trying to find a needle in a haystack, and then when you do find the needle, it's just a needle. Whereas if you get to this point, the dopamine is the haystack.
Yes, absolutely. It's
literally they exchange positions.
Yeah, and one of the backgrounds on this book is when I was looking at all the studies on it, I was teaching it on my YouTube channel, I was working with my patients with it. I would take these principles and then I would put them into action.
Yeah.
I did not know how the 48-hour fast, was it going to help mental health? Was it going to change people's relationship to food? Blown away. Mm-hmm. Every single time people come out of that fast happier for months.
Yeah.
And then they look at food very different.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons, and I don't know, you're obviously the qualified person in this conversation, but I think one of the reasons that a lot of people I'd love to fast, but I wouldn't be able to deal with the hunger. After 12 hours, you don't get hungry, so that's not an issue.
Right.
Are there any other issues?
For people not fasting?
In resistance to that. I mean, how are you with sleep?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question.
It all gets better?
Yeah. It all gets better. Okay, so the first thing is that you have more time on your hands.
Yeah.
I don't know what the longest fast you've done, but...
But psychologically, you're always building up to a meal anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, because I don't drink alcohol anymore, and psychologically, I was always building up to my first drink.
That's right.
I only drink on a Friday and Saturday. Yeah, but you think about it all week.
Yeah.
So if you take the meals out, you don't have just the mealtime free. Yeah. Psychologically, you have all this other time free.
So much time. And it's really strange. Yeah. I've had more people tell me, I didn't, the time I spend to shop for food and prepare for food and eat food, that's hours in a day if you think about it.
Food.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things is that you just start to free up your time. The other thing that I would say is some people do have some adverse reactions. So sometimes people can get some rashes or some brain fog, and that's just the body detoxing. It's just shedding these old cells.
That's to do with how toxic your body is in the first place.
Exactly.
But if you lead a healthy lifestyle, you'll find it even easier to do this. Anyway, and you probably be more of a mindset to do it. Right, 72 hours.
Okay, 72 hours. Walter Longo, he is a premier fasting researcher out of the University of Southern California, found that the whole immune system reboots itself. So it's specifically a study that was done on people going through chemotherapy, and they found that chemotherapy just decimated the whole immune system. So people would come out of that with a very depleted immune system. But if he put people into a fasted state while they went through chemotherapy, all of a sudden old white blood cells re-energized themselves and they came out of that experience stronger. So I call it the immune reset. I think once a year we typically do it. We just did 100,000 people worldwide together in January, all doing 3-day water fasts, because it's a great time to just reset your whole immune system.
And the data you're going to get from that is massive, isn't it?
Oh.
From 100,000 people.
Oh, yeah.
That's some kind of study, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if I had clinically looked at it that way, that would have been a great idea.
But it will help, though, won't it? It will help.
You know what? Here's what I know. The more I watch people fast, the more I'm convinced of everything I am telling you. And with 100,000 people, what I love this. I just read a study the other day about the empowerment that you feel, specifically women, when it comes to fasting. So think about this. You go on a diet, you take a drug, you take a supplement, it works for you. You give all the credit to those things. But when you don't eat for 72 hours, you go through the down of that and the up of that, and you come out the other side, you look at yourself in the mirror, and there is nobody to thank but you.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is taking your health power back, and why I love this.
Personal sacrifice in the will for personal benefit cannot be underestimated. The 1000x feeling of that.
That's right.
Is the real sort of jack in the box.
It's really, we have to go back to this hunter-gatherer idea to really grab your brain around this. Think about what they did when they didn't have food. We would not be sitting here if our ancestors didn't have this other fuel source that burned fat so it would give itself energy. They had to go days, sometimes weeks, without food. And so that's the fuel source that we haven't been accessing in this modern world.
So I run to the show, I do the show, I run from the show on Monday, Wednesday and Friday. On Tuesday and Thursday, I cycle to the show, I do the show, I cycle back from the show, I go home after fasting for 18 hours, and then I eat some food, and then I go and lift some weights in the gym, and I'm never in the mood. If I lift the weights before I eat, it'll be easier.
Yes.
I never knew that. I didn't know. Graham, I'm with you.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting because you are intuitively, per our conversation at the break, you're intuitively getting it. And I think that's the thing, is that when you haven't fasted, depending on what quality of food you're eating, and right now the world's eating really bad quality food, you've really lost your own internal navigation system with your body and with your cells. But back to what we said earlier, the more you learn to dip into these fasted states, the more you get synced up with your own natural rhythm of your body, 100%. And you hear things different, you crave things different, because you're now in rhythm with your body.
My wife ran 100 miles on Saturday, and she was out across the South Downs, and she said after being away from town, cities and villages for 10 or 11 hours, she then sort of she went over one particular peak, and there was Brighton, the town of Brighton, in front of her, and she saw cars again. Now, she'd only been away from man-made things for 11 hours, but it was enough to have the perspective of, that's a bit weird that we build those cars. And that was after just 11 hours of being away from them and being with the body the whole time. And it's the same, isn't it?
It's the same thing. And the taste, like when you go back, and it depends on how long you've been fasted, but you see food differently. You taste food differently. You appreciate food differently. Yeah. One of my favorite studies that I didn't write about in the book was the every other day diet, where they took people who had a really tough cardiovascular system. They were overweight. They were eating all the wrong foods. And they said, just eat whatever you want every other day. Yeah. And on the days off, you're going to not eat. And what they found was at the end of the year, all the cardiovascular metabolic markers had improved. They had lost weight, but the most shocking thing was their taste buds changed. They craved foods differently. They appreciated food differently. So all their eating patterns had changed after a year, and the researchers had not anticipated
that. It's like
that.
OMAD, isn't it? It's like one meal a day.
Very much like OMAD.
It's the same thing, isn't it? All right, good. Okay, so that's generally across the board. That is fasting. It's great for us. You want to know how to do it? You need to watch Dr. Mindy Pelz's YouTube videos. She's made hundreds. You can watch them for the rest of your life and have a longer life in which to watch them if you follow what's in them. Right, women.
Yes.
Girls.
Yes.
The female cycle. Okay, first of all, tell us how you have wonderfully reframed it in your book. So from week 1, from day 1 to day 7, and week 2, as opposed to all that, you've got the power phase and you've got the recuperation phase. Just take us through that and tell us why it's really important, not just for fasting protocols, but for fitness protocols. The Olympics, for example, the Olympics might be so unfair if you're a female athlete, depending on where you are in the female cycle. Over to you, Dr. Mindy.
Amazing. You get it. I love this. So, when fasting first became popular, what ended up happening is men were getting better results than women. So let's just start there. Mm-hmm. And then women tried harder, which is what we typically do.
Yeah.
And their hair started falling out. Their cycle started changing. So the media got a hold of this and basically said women shouldn't fast.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was looking
Which is so unlike the media.
I was in my clinic using fasting as a tool, but we were cycling it with a woman's hormones. And so I started teaching this on my YouTube, and we have like 74 million views on my YouTube alone. That was really started to see the patterns that when women fasted at certain points of their cycle and stopped fasting at other points of their cycle, they got all the upside and none of the downside. So to answer your exact question, what happens is day 1 to day 10 of a woman's cycle. And just so we're clear, because a lot of women don't know, day 1 is the day you have to use feminine care products, like you're officially bleeding.
So not spotting, it's the bleeding.
Not spotting. Well said. So that first 10 days, your body goes from a place of low hormones to building estrogen. Estrogen needs you to be insulin sensitive. So infertility, PCOS, these are all hormonal challenges for women that we can link to insulin resistance. So estrogen likes when you fast. Estrogen, to your point, I love what you said about the Olympics. Like estrogen loves when you push your workouts hard. If you go on a low carb diet, go on a low carb diet. Those first 10 days are fine. This is why I called it the power phase. I wanted to give fun names to the menstrual cycle because the menstrual
colorful, memorable names.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Nobody remembers follicular, which is what this part of the cycle is called.
It's a nice word if you can remember it.
Yeah, exactly. So then you move into ovulation, which I called the manifestation phase. And this one is really interesting in your comment about the Olympics. So day 11 to day 15, most women are going to ovulate. What's happening at ovulation? Estrogen's at her peak. So this is why, you ever sat with a woman who wants to just chat your ear off? Ask her if she's at ovulation. When estrogen's high, we have access to both sides of our brain. We have more dopamine. We have more serotonin. Like, we are spectacular humans during this moment. We always are, but especially during ovulation, which is why I called it the manifestation phase.
Also the best time if you've got, a female member of the family, if you need to communicate with them, is that when you go there?
That is a big thing I've been saying is we are locked and loaded with our superpowers during ovulation. So if you're trying to communicate with us, do it during ovulation.
Especially if you have a daughter who's going through GCSEs or other issues, that she literally can't hear you for some days of her cycle.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and thank you for bringing this up. I have sat with more parents that are struggling to get a conversation to their teenage daughters, and I say, do you know her cycle? And they're like, well, what does that have to do with it? Well, the time you would never talk to her is the week before her period, because when we get to progesterone, I'll explain why progesterone does not like cortisol. So anything stressful you bring her, she's going to shut down. But in the period we're talking about right now, day 11 to day 15, I called it the manifestation phase because we have estrogen at its peak, we have testosterone at its peak, and we have a little bit of progesterone. So we have to fast different. I don't want people doing long fasts. We should lean into foods that help us break these hormones down. But we also we're spectacular humans at this point.
I bet Taylor Swift knows her. I bet she schedules her concerts because she's just opened the UK leg of her Eras tour, and she does 3.5-hour gigs. I bet she knows about all this.
She probably does.
In Edinburgh, she smashed it because there are chronologically unrhythmical scheduled to her tour dates.
Yes,
and I bet she's all over this.
Yes. Well, once you understand the cycle, every high-performing woman should understand,
Absolutely.
here's when I should perform and here's when I should relax.
And the societal pressure on women to perform generally, 365 days of the year is counter to what Mother Nature has programmed her to do and can result in really very unhelpful consequences.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, because that was one thing I brought up, when I went on Diary of the CEO, was women require more rest if you look at us hormonally.
Tell us about Spain.
Yeah, right. So that doesn't mean that we are weak. I just want to point that out. It just means that when progesterone comes in, we can't have cortisol be at its height.
Yeah.
So we need more recovery that week before our period, which is why we don't fast that time. You shouldn't be pushing your workouts. And it can affect your cycle, can't it? It can affect your cycle. So here's what's blown me away from this book. We've sold like 700,000 copies across the world.
Control round of applause for number of copies sold so far. Yeah, thank you.
You guys are so fun. I love this. But what came back is how many 20 and 30-year-olds don't have a cycle right now. And so much of that is because they're just dieting, they're stressed, they're working out so hard the week before their period. Yeah. All progesterone wants to do is wants you to chill out, wants you to relax. We're more hungry the week before our period because progesterone needs glucose to come up. So the comment on Spain, and that was really interesting, was that Spain, and I don't know if that's still in effect or if it was just at the government level, they were going to apply a 3-day leave for women whenever they wanted it, a menstrual leave.
This is a monthly 3-day period.
Yeah, you can take a 3-day leave, menstrual leave.
Yeah.
Now, what was interesting...
No questions asked, wasn't it?
No question. I hope it was no questions asked. The interesting part of that is they were recommending that women do it during their period, and I'm saying, no, you should do it the week before. Yeah. So when we look at PMS symptoms, we look at irritability that women can get. What happens is we're not honoring that week before our cycle.
Yeah, and also it speaks, because we're running out of time now, but we're just pushing people towards your book. The detail, and it's beautiful detail, by the way. It's not dull, it's not mundane. It's great detail. It's like it's like a flight simulator when you get the startup procedure. You got to get it right, and if you get it right, you'll play the day on easy mode. I suppose that's what we're saying, isn't it? There's a way to flick the easy mode switch as opposed to play it on hard mode. But you do speak to the sort of macro of the female cycle, which is the premenopause, perimenopause, and postmenopausal thing. And that is all in here as well, isn't it?
Thank you.
So important. Listen, we have a minute left. What can you say that's most helpful to you, to your cause, and to people listening now in a minute?
First thing is believe in yourself. Take your own power back. You have all these switches inside of you that you don't need to spend money. It doesn't take time. It's within you. So learn to be curious about it. If you start to practice fasting, don't start judging yourself. If it gets difficult, play with the pieces. And the last thing I'll say is specifically to women is that it's really important now more than ever we understand our bodies. And Fast Like a Girl was my gift to all women to help them understand how to use this free tool to heal themselves.
Oh, can we just have one of the biggest round of applauses ever from the control room for Fast Like a Girl and Dr. Mindy Pelz. Thank you. 1,000 thank yous.